before I had a cell phone, I didn't check my email every hour. Now, by 58 minutes, I'm starting to shake. So I mean that not as a joke. So ideology is in the sense of meaningful practices. But we want to remember that ideology can only have its effects powerfully if it connects with our identities at the same time as it changes our identities. That's why I stressed it is changing our identities. So school practices that say you should not see yourself as connected, as in solidarity with other people. If schools become commodities, if children's data about their real lives becomes saleable for profit, simply by going to school, one is in an ideological setting. And that setting is like a bit like a computer. Someone is hacking. So I'm giving these examples because this is what makes this so powerful, that question. Yes, the answer could be simple. Yes, we are in ideologies. But we are not simply receptacles. We're not puppets. We have counter-hegemonic parts of our bodies and entities. So in the example I gave of Michael in the classroom, it would have been very easy for me to use Althusser's word to be interpreted, meaning to say, oh, damn it, I don't belong here. And I came close to saying that. I don't belong here. I can do the work, but my body doesn't belong here. I feel like I'm the other in this class. On the other hand, I bring with me hundreds of years of working class anger that says, I struggled hard and my family sacrificed and Rima sacrificed for me to finish this degree. You cannot dismiss me. No matter what you do, I will prove not to you but to me that all the sacrifices that were made by families over hundreds of years. Schooling then became a victory. You could not deny it. So yes, my body is living ideologically in that situation, but at the same time, I carry histories. This is what's wrong with Foucault. Ideologies circulate, they come down, they form our identities. Excuse me, I'm not a puppet. I create and live out counter-hegemonic forms. So there are progressive ideological moments working through me constantly. Okay? Now, so it's a brilliant question. All of these are very smart questions. But it means that we have to be very, very clear about these kinds of things. Otherwise, it's, that's why I want in the next lecture to say, is it all ideological form of a particular kind? Is it all reproduction? And we point to places and real sites in which this recognition that I just gave for my own self is lived for schools. And that's crucial. Okay? Is that enough? Is that clear? Yeah, please. Could you speak just a little louder? I'm sorry.
Thank you so much, Prof. I'm Pontian Kaveda. I'm thinking about a very critical issue in my country, especially when it comes to the issue of ideology. I come from Rwanda in Africa, and the facts of ideology played a critical role in our country's family first. But when you look at that genocide, you're using a very good word, identity. When you look at such identity construction in Rwanda, they have roots in the learning environment. Classrooms, the way history was being taught, that certain people were zeroed down to, they were dehumanized.
Yeah.
And the end result was a war and a genocide where over 1 million people were killed. But now what is challenging is that the victor power, the government that took over after the war, they seem to have learned nothing and forgotten nothing from what happened. So they also have their ideology that is spread through teaching and learning. They have Ngando, they have all sort of things, the civic training, teaching them values. They have now changed and reversed the history. So now my question here comes, how can you, because ideology at the end of the day when you go into political education or political science, they form the survival of different nations. Each nation has its own ideology that drives its economic development, its people survival. So how can we, within those ideologies that continues to define our daily interaction, how can we effect a learning environment that will pass on those ideologies for the better part of the society?
Sure. Well, Rwanda remains a tragic instance in many ways. And I've worked with a number of students myself, my teachers who are from Rwanda, so and other places such as Myanmar, where it's repeating exactly that with Rohingyas, refugees. But first, the very language that we use signifies that. The fact that we use the term refugee speaks to the way in which we other people. And in many ways, linguistic politics are real politics. So Rwanda becomes a very good example of the demonization of whole groups of people. And even though I talk about the effects of this on oppressed groups, this has effects on dominant groups. It justifies them. And that, so in a book that has been translated, the book that you were nice enough to mention, Can Education Change Society? One of the arguments I make is, interrupting this has been going on for centuries by oppressed groups. They are not always successful, and it often ends in tragedy and murder, in genocidal politics. And actually to call it politics is to misconstrue it. It is simply genocide. And it seems to me that our teachers on this must be those people and their experiences who have constantly acted to survive. And that would include in the United States, indigenous people, those people who were given the smallpox-infected blankets, people of color, women of color in particular. So we have to ask, who are our teachers in answering this question? And too often we stand on a balcony and say, I will bring a theory to you to understand this issue. These theories are already there in the practices of people trying to keep their children and themselves alive. So that reverses the pedagogic moment. And it seems to me that that's absolutely central to any liberation struggle, is to learn that you don't ask someone from the outside, except someone who is in the struggle with you, to begin to be taught as well as to teach. Okay? Now, I'm involved right now in a huge boycott and movement about another genocide we are seeing experience, and that is what I mentioned, the situation of Rohingya populations in Myanmar. So we are facing this right now. Over the last 15 to 20 years, we've been organizing a thing, as an example, a boycott of certain US companies that have stayed in there and support the government, in which we were able to reduce a large soda manufacturing corporation, its sales in the United States by 17%. So much so that they left Myanmar and no longer market their products there. I mean that as just an example when you say, what can we do? When we say about wars of position, anything that you possibly can. I can't be in Rwanda, I cannot be in Myanmar, and my friends would be arrested if they went back there because they are dissidents, even with Aung San Suu Kyi, whom we supported beforehand. But there are things in my own sphere that I must do, which is put pressure on American companies that are there supporting the genocide. So my answer to this is literally, and I don't mean this as a slogan, in your own sphere of power, what is your social responsibility? And unless you're asking that, you have no right to blame other people for not acting, okay? So again, whether my actions are perfect or not, I have no idea, other than I am supported, this group that we're involved in, by many people in Myanmar, which I take as crucial, okay? But again, powerful. Yeah, please.
Thanks, Professor. Going through all the four ideologies, I can see a clear line of power transition. I mean, from public to private to religion, or to the middle class, or the other way around.
Yeah.
So my question will be, from your point of view, like, who better have the power? Or is there any balance or equilibrium out of those? And my second part of the question, is there possibly in the foreseen future that the power could be eliminated? Or there's no, I mean, the existence of power could be eliminated? Two part of the question. Thanks.
Let me answer the second question first. No. By definition, education is a political and ethical act. It is some group, either through democratic means or non-democratic means, to influence the next generation. It must be held accountable to ethical norms, by definition. Okay? So, it's not as if there's no, I mean, education is about making choices about knowledge, values. Okay? That's, again, there is no better ethical dilemma than that, or no worse ethical dilemma. So I am not, I think it's quite romantic, and I think sort of counterfactual to think that we can somehow be beyond this. That's where Foucault is correct, among other times. As Michael knows, I have two legs. One of them is formed within Marxism and neo-Marxism. But issues of identity and issues of power as a productive force, I need post-structural and postmodern stuff. Okay? I do not like, I am what the French would call a bricoleur. So I am taking theories and political issues from a variety of perspectives, but my politics remains the same, which is I want to reconstruct the inequalities and challenge them, okay? But that, it seems to me, goes with the territory. And one of the things that worries me so much about still the dominance in curriculum, as an example, is it has become increasingly technicist. It's neutral. It's about measurement. The history of progressive education in the United States copies this. So as an example, I come from a tradition called in the US social reconstructionism. It says, what can schools do to change society? So I'm not the first to answer this. And if you know Bill Pinar's work, Reconstructionism, reconceptualism, it's a lie. None of this is new. There's never been any reconceptualization of curriculum. It never existed, and it doesn't exist now. Okay? We are asking questions that have, from the very beginnings of education, whose knowledge should be taught, why, how do we teach it, who should teach, what's the effects, what are students' experiences with it. You can't do education without those questions. It's not new. So my position is, this is about things that are constitutive. And I mean constitutive, you can't have education without raising these questions. Okay? But there are ways of doing it so that the deliberation is powerful and includes more than educators. So, after Ideology and Curriculum and Education and Power, the sort of initial books that have been translated into Chinese, I wanted to ask the question, what can we do? Okay? So a lot of teachers, when I was teaching, I really wanted one question to be answered. What do I do on Monday? That's an important question. Anyone who has ever been in a classroom, even at a university level, when you walk through the door, you better know what you're doing. You have to answer the question, what are we going to do? But if that's the only question you ask, you shouldn't ask it. Why are we doing this? What are the effects? Who should criticize it? Am I doing good stuff? Are there contradictions in what I'm doing? Right? What resources are available? That's what I want to answer. Okay? So after the initial books, I tried to raise the question, can we change education? That's your question. Well, the reason I'm doing this, and this is from about half of this is from a book called Educating the Right Way, where I set out to say, why am I assuming that this terrain, this area, that I'm the person, we are the only people acting on this? It's already filled with people acting, but not in ways that we think are democratic. It's these people now who are acting. So unless we understand who is dominating that position now, attempting to answer the question of how do I make it better is unwise. I have to understand who in schools right now internationally is saying they are changing society through schools. These are the people doing it. And they're changing it by changing identities, changing knowledge, changing the workers in schools and what they do, so that there's never time to think. So in the United States right now, as an example, teachers in many schools have lost time for preparing. So the average work week of a teacher in public schools in the United States is 58 hours a week. That's a lot of work, as salaries are going down because of inflation. So part of my answer is, in order to answer that question, we have to ask, who's occupying it now? So schools are being used for social transformation, but in exactly the wrong way. So I want us to study this group to say they've been successful. They're really changing society, economically, emotionally, people's identities as they become more selfish, okay? Or more capitalist, or never having time to be with their families. All of that is going on. Then we can ask, what did these people do? They didn't focus just on schools. They focused on changing people's understandings of society itself through schools and through other things. And they coordinated it. So I know this is a complicated thing, but it seems to me what we want to say is, first, power will always be there by its very nature. That doesn't mean it's bad. Power can be productive. Okay? It's not simply a possession that Michael has and you don't. Though some of that is there, to say the least. But it seems to me what we would then want to say is, and it's what I want to do in the next lecture, throughout the world right now, in China, in the United States, in South Africa, in Cairo, in Bucharest, in Rwanda, people are saying, you can't do this to me. I will sacrifice. And unfortunately, the sacrifice is often life. It's not a nice choice. So in the next lecture, what I want to do is to say, look, here are places where real teachers, real students, real administrators, real communities are interrupting this in real schools. and that is just as long a history in education. So let me remind you, education is not just a site of defeats. It's a site of victories. So I am here 50 years ago, well, 100 years ago, I wouldn't be here. Many of you would not be here either. That either means we're stupid, and someone recognized that Michael's smart, or a lot of people sacrifice to open the space. And Beishida becomes one of the centers of that, actually, where there are large numbers, not as many as I would like, of rural students, of working class students. That's a victory. So it's not like it's all bad and we must change. Some of it is defending the victories. So we want to remember again, it's like my point about ideology. There are people here carrying traditions of counter-hegemonic ideologies that are embodied. Let's remember that the reason these folks want to change schools and change their identities is because they don't like what we're doing. That must mean that we're doing some things that are good. That's actually crucial in a time when schools are being blamed for everything, for unemployment, for children not caring, for society falling apart. Excuse me, well, if we've got all that power, and we're doing what you want, why are you so angry at us? So I think, again, lecture 2, I'll attempt to try and answer the question practically. Okay? Okay. And then if I don't answer it, you can get angry at me.
Sorry for interrupting. As we nearly run out of the time, so I'm afraid we couldn't have more questions, but we can still listen to Professor Tan to have some response to Michael's presentation.
Ika asked me if I should say in Chinese. Because if I say in Chinese, I can say a lot. But even though my English is limited, but I have to say in English just because I have to express my welcome and thanks to Rima, Professor Apple. I think I met Michael first time around 2000 in Friendship Hotel. Yeah, that campus focus on learning. Yeah. Second time I think I met you in medicine. Yeah. This is the third time. So I'm very glad to be here to be a commentator to with Professor Apple. I think Apple's speech today continue his political analyzing of education tradition, I think. Yeah. So I do agree with Professor Apple's view. Education reform is not just education reform. It is powerfully linked to another political, ideologically elements like power, like classes, like a body, and so on. So I think Michael's speech gave us a lot of explanation. I think it is very meaningful, help us to understanding the ideological relationship with curriculum, teaching, teacher education, and educational policies, and so on. I think it is very, very helpful for me and for us to understanding reform in in the world, especially in our country, in China. Finally, I think I should say not just thanks this moment. I think I, as a professor in FOE, I do have another Michael who became to our colleagues like Michael Peters. So thanks and welcome.
Okay, thank you very much for Michael, Riva, and Professor Tan. I do believe you must get a lot from Michael's presentation today. We need to digest the knowledge later on, and I think ideology must be one of the most complex concepts in philosophy. But from Michael's presentation, we get to know ideology is not only the political issue, especially in this country, the ideology sometimes become a kind of a tricky concept. But after the Michael's presentation, we get to know the ideology could be the economic, cultural, and with hegemony. But that's the reason why the education, the teacher, especially teacher education, needs to think of and to discussing about these issues. Several days ago, I got a conversation with one of the Taiwanese professor, and she said she really loves the name of Beijing Normal University. The reason why is she thinks the normal makes something reflective or to be good, not just as a teacher education. I think this is really can be linked with Michael's presentation today. To be a teacher is not only the puppet of teaching. It should be keep alert, to keep reflective to the social phenomena. So thank you very much for all of your participation today, and thank you again for Michael and Riva.